What are the most unique RPG settings that you've made or played in?
I think people have a hard time with weird RPGs. And I don't mean weird in a Lamentations of the Flame Princess sort of sense, though the adventures that are related to Flatland and things like that perhaps fall into that category. For a community that is based upon exercising its imagination, it is disappointingly stayed the RPG industry and the kind of games that are successful. They're in fairly narrow bounds. Games that stray outside those bounds tend to have a bit of a hard time making any sort of success for themselves. There's a French-Canadian game called Mechanical Dream, which is probably one of the weirdest RPGs I've ever played, to the point where I don't even know how to explain it to you, really. It's a bunch of somewhat humanoid races that live around gigantic trees, and the rules are all very weird, and you're playing a sort of one of a group of chosen ones who have special abilities beyond the norm, but there's no humans. There's not really much in the way of recognizable stuff to any of it, and so therefore there is this huge barrier to entry, because you have to explain to people what the world is like, what the elements in it mean, and they have to be on board. They have to buy in to really get anywhere with it. Similarly, things like Bunnies and Burrows, it's an amusing footnote that very few people have played, but lots of people know about it. Or Tecumel, right? That's a hugely complex game world that takes a lot of effort to buy into, and that's why it's a very well regarded flop in a lot of ways, and the accusations of fascism on the part of Mar Barker don't exactly help in the modern environment either. Sky Realms of Jorun, people know it, but it's possibly a bit too weird for people, and it's a shame. I'm interested in weird and different experiences, but I'm in a tiny minority. As to the weirdest games or settings that I've created, probably the weirdest would be Imagination, which is kind of commentary on mental illness and so on. And so if you play the game, at least half the game will take place against a shifting sort of psychic landscape of weirdness that doesn't necessarily make sense or have to make sense in any way, shape or form. That's probably the weirdest one I've written, but I recognise this problem of getting across weirdness to people and getting them to buy into it and grok it with fullness. It's difficult. As to other weird games like Homebrew and so on, I mean, lots of people have a very particular focus or fetish to which they are devoted, and to which they are incredibly enthusiastic, and that doesn't necessarily carry well over to others. I remember a guy constantly trying to sell everyone on a game where you played bats in the way that you might play mice in Mouse Guard, or other animals in other furry games, even though anthropomorphic animals isn't exactly the same as furry, but that was a hard sell to people. I don't think he ever got anyone to play it, at least not at any of the conventions he was touting it around. And then, just recently, my eyes unfortunately fell across a game supplement called Gorge World, where you play enormously obese furries. Yeah,